let's go back to a full screen viewport, and you can see that when I actually clicked on the teapot, a little icon appeared in the viewport. Now I'm going to make that icon bigger by using the plus and minus keys on the keyboard. Those are the main plus and minus keys. Now what you're seeing at the moment is called the transform gizmo, and you can see if I zoom out it keeps its scale. Now this particular transform gizmo allows you to move the teapot around the screen. So if I wanted to move the teapot on the x-axis, I could grab this arrow here and move the teapot, and you can see it's just locked to that axis. I can do the same thing with the y-axis, same thing with the z-axis, so I can just move it up and down on z. And then if you move it in this area, you can see this rectangle highlights, same here and same here. And what that does is it allows you to move the teapot around on two axes at the same time. So in this case it would be x and y at the same time, or z and y at the same time, or z and x at the same time. So if I try that, you can see I'm now moving the teapot around on two axes at the same time. So it's moving around horizontally and it will not move up and down. In this case I'm going to move it up and down and left and right on the z and y axis. So it's actually moving up and down in space as well as in and out of the screen. And the same for the last axis. So you've got some pretty easy and simple ways there to move objects around and to limit their movement. If I look in a left viewport, you can see that you only have certain axes which are visible, in this case y and x. So you can see you can actually limit the way you can move an object by looking in one of the orthographic views, and this is quite a common method. If you want to ensure that you only move in one plane, you can change to, in this case, a left-hand view, and then you can move an object and you know it's just going to move in only two axes at once. So I'll press P to go back to perspective, and let me show you some of the other gizmos that we have. These are called transformation gizmos. Now if I press W, you get translation, so there's no change there. E will give you the rotation gizmo. So let me change the segmentation on this teapot, which is something we'll come to later in the tutorial, so we can see this a little bit more clearly. And I'm going to change the size a little bit. There we go. The rotation gizmo is pretty much the same as the translation gizmo, but as you can imagine it's used for rotation. And you can see that the axes are represented by these semicircles. And in this case, the x-axis you can see is color-coded red. You can see that the y-axis is color-coded green, and the z-axis is color-coded blue. So if I select the blue circle and move, it's just rotated just on the z-axis. Same thing for the y-axis, sorry, the x-axis, and the same goes for the y-axis. Now, something that you can also do in this mode is you can't actually lock an object to two axes at once, but you can, if you click off any of the circle areas, do a gimbal mode, and you can also do the same by clicking outside on the yellow circle on the outside of the teapot, and in this case you're rotating it just around the viewport axis. So imagine if you draw a line from where you're looking from into the scene, and imagine that you're rotating the teapot on the axis of that line. That's what the outer yellow circle allows you to do. So again, that's pretty flexible. As we move around, you can see, you can look at the teapot from any angle. Remember, I'm using Alt and middle mouse button to do that, and I'm using the middle mouse button on its own to just pan around. So that's the E key. We'll bring up that particular gizmo, and the final gizmo is the R key, and that will bring up the scale gizmo. This again works pretty much in the same manner as the other two gizmos. You have the ability to scale just on one axis by grabbing the handle just for that axis. There we go, doing the x-axis there. Same thing for the y-axis. And again, if I go in the middle of the gizmo, you can see that there's a yellow triangle. That allows me to scale on all three axes at the same time, otherwise known as uniform scaling. So with uniform scaling you don't distort the teapot, which you can see unfortunately I've done. And you can also go to these bars which allow you to again scale just on 2 axes at the same time. So in this case X and Y, so you can see we're just scaling it horizontally, or for instance Z and Y, so you can choose just scaling on that axis, and so forth. So you can see you've got a lot of flexibility there. So these gizmos are very fundamental to the way that you work in Max. And as an example, if you've ever used Maya before, they might be familiar from Maya. So that's actually quite a cool thing, because if you're used to them in Maya, you're pretty much used to them in Max.